Welcome, Sacred Rainbow Warriors. Today we're talking about demons, a very difficult topic to talk about. So I'm lighting my candles, I'm creating a ceremony, I'm bringing in my ancestors, and we're going to talk about the Antichrist, selling the soul, the Dark Coalition, what demons are, how they appear within us, spiritual parasites, and how to destroy demons in the best way possible. Stay tuned. Now remember to stick on to the end of this video because the longer I talk, the more momentum I build and the more incredible it gets. And I'm going to tell you how to get rid of these bastards, so stick around right to the end. Welcome everyone, welcome warriors. Okay, so I'm going to treat this video like a ceremony. So I'm going to welcome in my ancestors to make me feel safe, to make you feel safe, so that we can really go into real depth in this video about demonic entities. So I'm not going to hold back this time because I haven't been wanting to talk about this for a very long time. So I'm going to bring in a lot of knowledge and it's going to destroy anything you previously knew about demonic entities. Okay, so first. I welcome my ancestors, and I welcome the seven directions. I welcome the direction of east. I welcome the direction of south, the direction of west, and the direction of north, the direction of down, the direction of up, the direction of in. I welcome all of our brothers and sisters from the galaxies and beyond. I welcome your ancestors. I welcome my ancestors. So let's dive in. Okay, so first, right. Let's talk about the Antichrist. Now, I'm going to do a whole separate video on the Antichrist because it's quite big, but I'm just going to touch on it because I did a channeling for my back podcast on this, episode 21. You can check that out for the full channeled story right from source. Antichrist essentially is the opposite of love. So if Christ consciousness is love consciousness, Antichrist is the opposite. It's basically what it is at its core. It's complete stagnation of creation because creation is love, and anything that is the opposite of creation is complete the the inability to want to evolve and grow, and the it brings us all to a standstill in expansion and evolution. So the essentially the ego is essentially, yeah, it is Antichrist, right? So the ego is Antichrist. And I always link this in my videos back to toxic shame avoidance, which essentially is the definition of narcissism, right? Now, there's a big trigger word for people, narcissism, because it's so big. It's like using the word love. Love's so big. How do you describe something without using the word love all the time? I love this, instead of saying something different, like it's fantastic, it's beautiful, it makes my heart sing, things like that. But the same can be said with narcissism, and it's like the umbrella for demonology, really, and that's why I'm talking about it. Because essentially, what narcissism does is that it is a weakness, but it mirrors against us, and this it's this searching for weakness within us. So people with narcissistic behavior seek weakness, they look for that weakness, and then they exploit that weakness and jump in. And that's how entities attach. That's where it comes from. And I'm going to go into a lot more detail on what they actually are. So love is our strength and our truth. And when we live in love without the weakness of narcissism, we're untouchable, because love is the healing of separation. Narcissism is the avoidance of that healing. It's separation. It's moving away from love. And that that antichrist essentially is the shadow. It's the shadow of God in a way, right? So it's the shadow of light. But uh, it's not a pure shadow. It's a distorted shadow. It's where the mirror has been cracked and everything is back to front, upside down, and inside out. And this is where I talk about the Dark Coalition. So the Dark Coalition is mainly based around dogma. And dogma is, if you spell it backwards, it's essentially, dogma is I am God. And dogma is Antichrist because it's based on a belief system, that everything is outside of us, that God is outside of us, that love is outside of us, that wealth is outside of us, that everything that we value is outside of us when it's inside, right? And then if you turn that around and think about depression, narcissism, suicidal thoughts, PTSD, discrimination, racism, any of these names, any of these disorders, any of these illnesses, we always talk about them like they're inside of us, right? And so this is what Antichrist does. It turns everything inside out using dogma, and this is the Dark Coalition. Where does all that gold come from, right? And so this is what I'm doing with my partner, right? We're trying to repurpose repurpose everything through our joint channel prophecy walkers, right? We're trying to repurpose the money through donations. So please, 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 we're doing this for a living. Been living on the savings for the past 4 years. We really welcome your donations to make this come true because we want to get these bastards. We want to help people rise through this, and I'm going to talk about this so I can help you rise through it, right? So that the Dark Coalition feeds on money, sex, and power. This keeps them in a position of dominance, right? But essentially, using demons, they are feeding on us. We're like their currency. They feed on our misery, our complaining, because that's what it does. It earns them sex, money, and power. And because of that, everybody's in the wrong position, right? We're in either a patriarchy or a hidden matriarchy. But essentially, before a patriarchy or toxic patriarchy or toxic matriarchy came into effect, there was a synarchy where everybody knew their place through the purity and embodiment, knowing full well that what our divine purpose is here on earth, the reason why we're here. So now I'm going to talk about now that we've covered, I've touched on that because I'm going to do a full video on the Antichrist, right? But what are demons? So essentially, demons, and I'm going to explain this in so many different layers because it's so big. Like I said, I'm going to catch momentum and I'm going to keep going with this. So, demons, first of all, I'm going to say demons are the soldiers of Antichrist, okay? That much is obvious. But the thing is, right, lies. So lies, we say that Lucifer is the prince of lies. Lies are the cult we are sold, and demons are the soldiers that perpetuate those lies through illusion. They coerce us into creating them in through second dimensional reality, which is the sacral. So I know this because I worked through this on my own journey where if the root chakra is number one, that's first dimension, these are really basic behaviors, right? And you move up to dimensions, and you can see that the hijack of humanity happened through the sacral, which is essentially is the energy of life force and birth and rebirth and this real powerful feminine energy, the womb energy, and this is where it's been hijacked, and so they would come through the second dimension to access the sacral to feed off that life force and that sexual energy. And this is one of the ways they come through. Now, what's interesting is they weren't created, they weren't born. We created them. We are creators. We're really powerful. And when you create a link to that sacral chakra, they activated a way using their technology, the hidden technology, to not only suppress all these different parts of us, but to control how we project using our third eye. And our projector is what we see, that we try to project, that we see on the outside. This is why there's so much separation in the world right now, because they essentially demons manipulate these entities. They manipulate us to project the fears that we have inside that they create onto other people. And so we blame other people. But if you internalize that, they have manipulated the third eye so that we project our fears in front of us instead of realizing that they're internal, and to acknowledge that and take responsibility for that. Now, our essence essentially is traded without our awareness, and this is where we become commodities. A bit like in the Matrix, very like in the Matrix. It's like a documentary, because demons are commodities. They're used to as an exchange with soul pieces without our awareness, and we're tricked and manipulated, and they're stolen. For example, if you're when you're born, if your umbilical cord is cut too early, it can cut you off from source, and this is intentional. They get us as soon as we arrive, and they try to take away our sovereignty by making us sign a birth certificate and all these kinds of things. But essentially, when they trade those pieces of our soul with darkness, essentially a piece of coal, Every time we do that, we give into fear and shame and illusion, and we're selling parts of our soul. And I've done so many videos on this, like walk-ins and things like this. And they are essentially they are children of narcissism that prevent us from creating from a place of love. Instead, we create from a place of fear. Like, have you noticed how I'm a big fan of movies, but how the horror genre has just like escalated because we're getting closer and closer to this big change that's going to happen. And they're trying everything they can to get us to manipulating, creating our own misery and creating our own fear, creating our own self-destruction, right? Now, if I tell you, if I tell you how I found this out on my own journey, it was really profound. So I'm going to take my time with this one. So my journey into knowing what demons are took me in a very bizarre direction, right? So I started at the beginning. I had a lifetime of really quite severe trauma, a lot of violence, a lot of emotional abuse. And when I went out into the world, that violence followed me. By before the age of 11, I believe it or not, I split my head open more than 11 times, totaling 30 stitches, broken two fingers, and that was before the age of 12, right? 12 or 11, yeah. And loads of other trauma that I'm not going to go into detail, but essentially, I tried to make something of myself, went to university, um, knocked some guy's chips out of his hand when I was drunk, hit me to the curb, slipped my head open, my whole world changed, right? Woke up the next day, didn't know what was going on. Doctor didn't know how to help me. Fast forward a few years, I failed the first year at university, retook it, passed, and then in my second year, which was actually my third year, I nearly lost my leg in a drunken accident. Right, so yeah, idiotic things I used to do because essentially what happened was I started to drink because the pain was too much. Right, because what happened when I got my head kicked in, it was this side here. I got a scar there. I was bleeding out everywhere, but that's beside the point. The physical pain wasn't the issue. It was what it did to my whole psyche. And we're taught that psyche is the mind, and it did affect my mental health, but psyche actually means soul, right? And that's why psychedelics means reveal the soul. That's why they're so powerful at healing. And I went back into life a completely different person. I became very analytical because they hit the feminine side of my brain, which is the very creative side. And so essentially it damaged that part of myself, not just physically, but spiritually. And so I became very left brain, very, very logical, very controlling. And it did help me, but I was missing this creative side. And so I fell into not knowing what to do because I didn't have any of that creativity in my life. So I didn't know what to create. And so I kind of fell into the matrix. I was trapped to the matrix. I need to make money. I need to make money. So I signed up for temp jobs and I ended up freaking 18 years in finance, soul destroying finance, where I was essentially living a lie. But what happened was I moved from my hometown in 2014 to London, and I got a job at a nice new bank in 2015. And part of, the benefits of working in London is you get you get medical, free medical. And I went to see a doctor, and he diagnosed me, and he told me I had CPTSD. So I started my journey of responsibility essentially because I knew something was wrong with me. I changed after I got my head kicked in and everybody ignored me. Nobody listened to me because I needed to listen to myself. And I spent a life in victim mentality and pity. But when I arrived in London and I got seen and someone acknowledged that I had a problem, I was like, right, thank you. I'm going to do something about it. And within a week, I was seeing a psychotherapist. I started reading self-help books on mental health, everything you could find out. I started because I was now earning decent money as well, I started getting a fitness instructor. I started Pilates classes, yoga classes. I even started eating more healthy, but I was still drinking. So I couldn't, I was still drinking quite a lot at this stage. But what I noticed when I got my head kicked in is that I didn't understand my emotions. And this is where, and I will get to the facts, how I learned about demons. But this is, I'm going to talk a lot about emotions because it's really, really closely linked to this, right? So When I discovered this diagnosis, I got diagnosed as CPTSD, but there was also autism, bipolar, and narcissism, which came later, and that's where I got really frustrated because I went on this journey of psychotherapy where I thought, that was the answer, oh, psychotherapy, and it's brilliant, but it has its limitations because it is very mental. And so there are other therapies that I needed to do. I needed to get into the body. And I was seeing this therapist for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and I was felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And so I said to him, I'm getting these horrible thoughts every day, and it's really driving me crazy. Is there something we can do about it? And he's like, what are your thoughts? I just hate everyone. Everyone is lesser than me. Everyone is either fat or ugly or something. And I just it was driving me nuts, this voice in my head saying blah 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 blah. And he said, yeah, that's narcissism. And I was like, why didn't you tell me that earlier? And I found it really frustrating because essentially I could have learned that after about a year and done something about it. So as soon as he said that, I realized that I wasn't moving forward. And I was like, I needed something else. And so I asked the universe, what's next? And I got drawn to a Joe Rogan podcast, and he started talking about ayahuasca, and something in me just lit up. So I started my plant medicine journey. And at first, it felt like, wow, okay, this is brilliant. This is a beautiful experience. This is really going to help me, and it did. But I started seeing the traps in that arena of the spiritual community, and I had to find a way out of that quickly because I could see how toxic it was because I'd essentially taken responsibility for my narcissism, and I could see everyone around me either behaving like a victim within their own narcissistic behavior or exploiting other people with their own narcissistic behavior. And then you had that person in the center, the rescuer, which was also exploiting both of those energies as well. And so I was like, I didn't believe myself. Is this true? Is this happening? And then I remember I was in one of my first ayahuasca ceremonies, and I was attacked by a shaman, and he was this black guy, and his skin came off, and I saw this skull, and he was coming at me, and I was like, I just got here, like, why are you attacking me?" And so I was like, "Ah, get out of here, get out of here." And I said to the guy afterwards, who was holding the space, who essentially wasn't a shaman but was telling everyone he was. I told him, he goes, "Oh no, it's all in your head. It's all nonsense." And I was like, "Oh right, okay, okay." And then I spoke to another woman. She's like, "Don't worry, I saw it too." And then I felt really humiliated after that because I realized that that was really narcissistic behavior, like essentially gaslighting me. And so that energy started to follow me around what came in that journey, that demonic entity, that shamanic entity. And I started to work with let's say other plant medicines. And stupidly, I did it on my own in London, which was probably the worst place ever. And I didn't know how to bring in protection at that time. I didn't know how to access my heart. So it caused me a lot of trouble. Loads of entities came in and they essentially kicked. It was really strange. It came in and they started kicking stuff around, and my candle went out at the same time. So it really spooked me. And then I realized I wasn't getting anywhere and that was too dangerous and that I needed to work with a proper person. So again, I was really unhappy. I was working in finance, and I sat in my altar because people told me to create an altar, and I sat in my chair meditating, and I said, I was crying. I was going, "Universe, please get me out of here, get me out of here, get me out of this job." And then a few weeks later, I found myself in Holland, and I met my now partner, and we became really good friends. And she was working with medicine in Holland, and she knew exactly how to work with it. And it was really profound because I'd never seen anyone work with medicine that way. And essentially, what happened is we sat opposite each other, and we started speaking to each other about our toxic behaviors as friends and how we wanted to heal them. Like all the toxic behaviors I had against women, all the toxic behaviors I had against people, against society, against myself, against my family, against my friends. And it was really interesting. And so we just started exposing it all, sat opposite each other, and we were working with these different plant medicines. And then one day I started to realize these entities would come in, and they would either want to be acknowledged or seen or something like that, or felt. And I realized quite quickly what these were, but it took me a long time to figure out how damaging it was. So the first way it came in was that I just had this epiphany that I could heal myself through healing distortion. So, for example, if I was, very unhappy, so let's say the distortion of depression, right? So depression was a demon. And so I would either speak to it, which wasn't a great idea, because they always say the same thing. Oh, you're a piece of shit. Yeah. They all say the same thing, all of them, right? And you can see how that was mirrored in society with people who are having a difficult time. They're just expressing their demons, right? And then I would find a way of killing them and getting rid of them, and I'm going to talk about that more later. But there are very easy ways to do that. But I fell into the trap of like, oh right, I'm gonna kill all these demons and I'm going to get rid of them. But it was a huge distraction because there's in I'm not going to say infinite, they're not infinite, but there were loads of them, loads. And I didn't ask for a number, I just knew there were too many to count. And so we started working with our spiritual guides to understand how to get rid of them. But I found my own method, but I'm just going to tell you the way our spiritual guides, they said, have fun. And that changed everything for us because we thought we had to be very serious because we were taught like that through ceremonies. You sit and you be quiet. That's what we're taught by Western shamans. And so we did the opposite. We would lie down, go into meditation, feel it, and then we would dance and we would talk to each other, and we would have as much fun as possible, and it raised our vibration enormously. And then we were able to see the truth. And I remember it was in November 2021. I was in a very powerful ceremony, and we did something which, in hindsight, was pretty stupid, but it seemed to have been the only way that worked at the time. Is we had a ceremony on during a really powerful eclipse, and everything went completely tits up. And what happened was I went in the wrong direction. And I essentially went to find out, what is this? What are all these demons? And I got the answer and I vomited. It was essentially, I realized I had this profound embodiment that nothing is ours. All of those things like depression, shame, narcissism, apathy, you name any toxic disease or any kind of toxic behavior, anything whatsoever, none of it's ours. It was brought here and implanted in us. And when I realized that, it was so overwhelming that I vomited. And I was on my bed. And then because Hazel and I were journeying together, I then contacted her, and she was almost losing her mind. And so I had to, because I just had this realization, knew what they were. I realized it was an entity attached to her that was keeping her stuck in her mind and not in her heart. And I got rid of it, and she was able to come back in her body. But if I hadn't, that could have been extremely dangerous, and she could have lost her mind. So I've gone to really enormous risks, not intentionally, but unconsciously. And my soul told me that I would use this to help people navigate these dangers. And this is what I try to do. I try to be in service, and that's why I've been living on my savings doing this, and I don't have income. So please welcome your donations. Thank you if my work is helping you. So I try and keep on target, right? So then after that realization, I started finding different ways of killing them. And again, I'm going to go into more detail on that in a bit. But I started to see that there was these spiritual parasites like vampires, and they are created from this umbrella of narcissism, and they're fed through emotional suppression because they feed on life force. And when there's emotional suppression, we get disease, and these emotions that we're afraid to see, what they do is they trick us into being afraid of our own love, and they turn everything inside out and back to front and upside down. So a simple emotion. Let me try and think of one that I overcome. Jealousy. Yeah, that was a really profound one. So I realized that jealousy had been implanted in me, and a wasp spirit came in and landed on my chest, and it told me what to do. and it told me to put a rose quartz on my chest, and it went in there, and the pain, I had this inflamed shoulder on my left shoulder, on my feminine side, because it was a feminine woman who was jealous of my mother, and she put that energy in there, and it went into the stone, and I pulled it out, and I didn't have to have surgery anymore. I could lift my arm. It was incredible, and I talk about that on my WASP podcast, the whole story. And so then I started to realize who and what was behind these spiritual parasites and how they fed and how they directed them. And my journey's taken me into understanding that in totality so that I could heal myself in new and incredible ways. And what happened is parts of my soul started to come back, parts of light, and I started to ascend. And we quickly went from the fourth to the fifth dimension and above. And we realized that the heart consciousness sits in the ninth dimension, and we started working really heavily with our guides, the GFL, or a lot of Egyptian gods, etc. And we were being guided day by day, day by day, speaking for at least 8 hours a day. She was in Holland, and we were doing a lot of it over video. And we're speaking every day, exposing everything. And what we realized very quickly is that through sharing, when you expose a vulnerability or something that you're afraid of, a fear, it's like you're regurgitating, purging the demon through words. And so the more we exposed, the lighter we felt, and we would purge in so many different ways, like yawning, burping, laughing, sneezing, and other ways. And we we did all of this just on our own together, and it was a really profound work. And it it elevated us so quickly. And whenever we were having a bad day, we would come together and go, right, what is this? How do I feel? And it'd be like, tune in. Okay, I feel tired. Why do you feel tired? Oh, something's feeding on my life force. Okay, what energy is it? It's impatience. Okay, let's tune into that impatience. Where does that come from? And it's like, oh, okay, comes from not having my needs met. Is that it? And then I'll use a really good one, right? Uh, Judgment. Okay, judgment. So I started working with spirit animals because when I took ayahuasca, I realized I could see spirit animals and I could see spirits. And so I was able to learn how to speak to them. And if you look at the shadow of the jaguar and podcast about that as well, the in order to embody the pure energy of the jaguar, the shaman, it requires integrity. But the shadow is judgment. And so I started to realize this, like, this is really profound. So if I'm out of my integrity, then I'm judging myself or others. But in order to break judgment, I need to come back into my integrity. And so we started going to this detail of determining what animal represented which emotion. And I created a chart. Like, I'm looking to my right because I've got it on my wall. I've got loads of spirit animals, and I've got a chart. I've got them split into the different elements: earth, water, fire, etc., and the different chakras. Got it all color coded and everything. Let's see if I can show you. Uh, no, it won't because I've got the background. I'm using the background as well as part of my protection, rainbow protection. Right. So okay, let's talk about the stag, right? Because the stag is part of my logo for my channel, and it represents pride, healthy pride, right? And so I went into that to understand sexuality. Why does the pride flag missing the color blue? And it's to do with the voice, the purity of the voice. If that purity isn't there, then we don't behave as ourselves. And I started to see all these different demonic entities around sexuality, and they were really big ones that took me a very long time to understand and to determine and to purify. And but what the stag taught me was it was about divine leadership. But if I wasn't in my self leadership, then I would mislead myself. So these opposites would apply. And then I realized that those were the light shadows, but it had dark shadows in the deep as well. And these were split between masculine and feminine. And so the deep shadow of the stag, which is probably one of the most profound distortions out there, essentially is stagnation through ignorance. And I learned that ignorance is turning a blind eye to love. So it's looking the opposite way to love, essentially turning towards fear. And ignorance is a drug that numbs, it's an addiction to numbing the pain, this really deep unconscious pain that we're all going through. And so I would say to the universe, like we were in ceremony, my partner, I wish to understand ignorance. I wish to clear out ignorance to me. And I'd be taken on this incredible journey to understand it through joy and love. But sometimes I would mislead myself into this demonic realm, and then I would get attacked by these entities again, and it was just impossible to integrate. And I think this is what a lot of people have difficulties because they don't know the correct direction. Because if I went through that, then other people go through that, and so I had to follow the feminine. I had to listen to my partner Hazel, and she knew the way. It's all about love. And so I learned on my journey the difference between masculine demonic entities and the feminine, and how I would demonize the feminine on so many different levels. So many different levels. Like I'm still integrating and still doing the work now. There's so many hidden ones, pre-programmed ones, societal program ones, DNA program ones, birth through family, through friends, through the news, through social media. There's so many different ways that they come through, and they create division tactics, and this is how they turn us against each other. Like I'll give you I'll tell you now, right, that they teach us how to separate ourselves. Okay, they teach us how to create further separation in society. So now I'll go into that, the division tactics, right? This is how they separate us and turn us upon each other. Okay, and I'm not going to go into detail on these because this video would go on for a very long time if I did, but there's so much I can say on this. Like I could write several books on this. I'm trying to give you as much direct, useful information as I can right now, right? So this is how they separate us. Politics. Okay, really obvious one. Do I choose them or do I choose them? They force us to make a choice, and they give us too many choices, and they give us bad choices, right? And they take that power of self-governing away from us, like community. War perpetuates further suffering. It's really obvious, right? It's boys and their toys fighting over something, normally about land or oil or ammunitions. It's always there's always a hidden agenda. Okay, gender. This is a big one. I touched on this about pride, pride of who we are, sexuality. Sexuality, especially through the voice, it emits who we truly are, and it's really scary, really scary. And I realized that a lot of the abuse from sexuality creates gender separation. So we have all these different forms of gender separation now, and they're all created from these demonic entities that really touch on core wounds, really hidden ones, like they can be early life, past lives, really hidden trauma, and really dark and very difficult to talk to people about. And it creates confusion and, in a lot of cases, regret. So very, very difficult. Another one, which is very obvious but may not occur to you, is food. They cause us to consume, to feed those holes that we're ignorant to, and they fill them with, for example, meat. Right? It's got demonic entities of cruelty in it. It's just one of them. There's loads of different entities in meat, and supermarket foods are full of them. They put, sunflower oil, they put polyunsaturated fats in everything, they put sugar in everything, right? And there's slavery entities in sugar. That's one I had to get out of my system. That was horrible. They enslave us through the reptilian part of the brain when we take processed sugar, because organic sugar still has those nutrients and minerals in it, but they strip it bare, and it's all robotic. And whoever owns that company, and we know who owns the majority of those companies because you just need to follow the money, that energy drips down. It's like demonic blood. It drips down into all of that food, and sugar creates addiction. And I could talk to you about addictions all day. That's another entity, an enormous entity, and that was programmed through satanic magic. I saw all of this on my journey. Supermarkets make us dependent on cheap foods that are polluted to make us ill, and that then leads us on to pharmaceuticals. Like, why do pharmaceuticals have labels that say may cause death, may cause suicidal thoughts? Because those entities are in them, and they teach us to be dependent on them instead of coming back to nature and realizing that everything is there for us, to help us. And there are so many things I can say about that through taking my own healing journey. Like I've healed so many problems in my body just by tackling the core issue of the emotional issue. And I know there's been so many studies on this, and it's linked to the water in our bodies. Water holds consciousness, water holds memory. And if the memory is spoken to, like I speak about alcohol, I've got a bottle of water here. If I pray and say words of love to it, if I give it like a mini ceremony and I say, I love you, then it holds that energy. But if I say negative words to it, those molecules change and it goes into a negative energy and it doesn't fulfill us, right? So all of these things are out there and I've seen them with my own eyes and I've felt them with my body. Religion. So I spoke about this with the Antichrist, right? Dogma. Misuse devotion. Like people are unknowingly channeling their energy and suffering by worshipping a Jesus on a crucified cross. Like that's disgusting. It's brainwashing, right? I always say this, end the crucifixion on love. If you're going to worship Jesus, don't worship him hanging on a cross, bleeding with nails in his hands and feet. It's you know, it's dishonorable. It's not cool. Consumerism creates emotional voids filled by things, not the truth, right? Consumerism is a huge one. It's essentially um, entitlement. It's taking more than we need, and it's taking from Mother Earth, and they bombard us with so much choice that it spins our head, and we end up realizing that we don't actually know what we need anymore. And so by giving us too much choice, they are trying to get us into our brains and our mind, through logical thinking. And logical thinking only half works because you need the multi-dimensional aspect of who you are as well. And it has to come through the heart, it has to come through feeling the body. The body is a multi-dimensional, complex vessel that holds the soul. And when we're working with the energy of consumerism, it tricks us into giving us so many choices that we end up consuming more than we need. And because we're consuming more than we need and we've got too many choices, we're consuming the wrong things. So that's a really strong one. And again, I could talk about that. Psychology over shamanism. So they want us in our minds, right? And so they use things like using the word mindfulness, and they honor people with big brains, like think tanks and all of this stuff. And it's always about thinking, 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 thinking. But on my journey, I used to believe that. I was a big fan of science. Study a lot of read a lot of books on physics and chemistry, and studied it at university. I did ocean science, and I then I fell into psychology, and I found it extremely interesting. So I started doing loads of self-study on that, and speaking to professionals, like I said, different professionals. And then I realized that, especially after I'd been diagnosed with narcissistic behavior, was that those energies of being held space by sitting opposite a psychotherapist, it was always mental. And I realized like it was never ending, just like when I got my energy, when I understood the demonic energies, it was never ending. And when I took my plant medicine journey and I started working with Hazel, I realized that women are much more natural shamanic leaders in that spiritual realm because they're naturally more in their heart, so they're more powerful. And so she taught me how to learn to open my heart again as a man because mine was firmly shut from all the abuse I'd received. And it was a profound journey that taught me how to overcome logic and see beyond the whole reason we're here. It saw me to see beyond all the lies and everything, and it blew my mind to pieces. I lost my mind in the best possible way. And because I did that, I started to learn the power of the heart. And it's not logical. If you see the energetics of how a heart moves, it's like a vortex. So it's about energy. It's not about neurons like we're taught. It's not about brain power. It's about feeling. It's about channeling love through the body. The heart chakra is a purification chakra. Everything needs to go through the heart. So everything is purified through the heart. And when we feel love through the heart and through the body as a whole, not just in the mind and in the brain or the brain, is we start to touch into God consciousness. We start to touch into love consciousness. And when you come deep enough into the purified heart, everything is known. Everything. We know everything, but we've forgotten because we think that we're unaware, that we don't know, but we already know everything. We're not here to learn. We're here to recreate ourselves. We're here to create. We are creators. And shamanism was stolen by psychology. Shamanism is the advanced psychology because it's a study of the soul, not of the mind. Psychology, psych means soul, and psychedelics means to reveal the soul in Latin, right? And so what I'm doing here is I'm lifting the veil, which is Latin translation is apocalypse, and people keep talking about that. I've done videos on that, and then there's science over belief. So science is great, but again, it takes out the multidimensional aspect by trying to prove everything. So it's always guilty until proven innocent, and that's another one. Law creates separation as well. And the thing is with science, it creates disbelief, which creates separation. Another one is education. We're essentially designed to fill ourselves with nonsense, not to enlighten us, but to create like automatons. And when I took my journey, I had to unlearn everything that I learned at school. And I've met people who either didn't go to school or homeschooled, and they're so much more enlightened and emotionally stable than I've ever met than going to a public or a Catholic school in my case. And they teach us false histories, false ideas, and they don't prepare us for the things that we actually need to know, like mortgages, paying bills, how to pay credit cards, look after your finances, not eat good food, how to cook, those kinds of things. And then there's sport. They teach us to take sides. You look at football, it's football hooliganism. That's a profound example of what separation does, And there's so many different ways. There's manipulation of natural medicines. That creates separation, preventing us from regaining our sovereignty and the freedom of our souls. And then there's the power hierarchy. It's all inverted. Everybody's in the wrong position. Like I said, upside down, inside out. They've stolen our true positions of power. Then we have the big one, money. Money is like a cage for everyone, and we're their currency, and it's used to lock humanity into survival mode and control the system. They're stealing all our money. Like everything is taxed, and then it's passed on, it's taxed again, and it's all going in the same direction. Everybody knows that, and they're taxing everything, and they're not giving it to the right people. And there's excuses upon excuses, but it's all about separation. Relationships, separation through blame and judgment. Sex, perversion, and lust, and porn, and all of that. They're all forms of separation and degradation. Social media, we become commodities. They steal our data, and they define us by our attention and validation through dopamine addiction, huge addiction, and where the opposite is serotonin, which makes you feel here in your body, whereas dopamine brings you into the mind. It's all to bring us into fear, into the mind, so that they can control us. And I've spoken about law and innocence, right? Now, this is where it gets interesting because separation creates emotions, negative emotions. So this is where we create or we choose to attach to negative entities, demonic entities, right? And I started to realize that very quickly that when you are in a victim mentality, emotions can become very deeply ingrained. And what I realized when working in a perpetrator energy as well, if I was being horrible to someone or horrible to myself internally, which was most of the time, it would create more shame. And the more shame I created, the more of these different negative emotions I would create. And there were just so many, there was violence, there was not knowing, there was mind control, there was damnation, denial, exploitation. I'm just reading out a list of the ones I went through. There was bullying. Bullying was a huge one. Worrying, distraction, creeping, interference, sacrifice, the distortion of sacrifice, unrequited love, manipulation, addiction, premature action, skepticism, confinement, false endorsement, decadence. I could go on. Loads, absolutely loads. But I turned it upon itself. This is how I beat it. I used the demonic energy against itself. And this is really profound. I had this moment, I think it was in 2022. We were taught, have joy. And so I started dancing and I realized that my mirror, my opposite was this dark entity. Like, what happens when you face your nemesis? Essentially come face to face with, what do you want to call it? The devil. Okay. And it doesn't want to submit. And so I thought, okay, you want me to feel shit. You want me to feel crap. You want me to feel really depressed. Okay, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to feel it. And this is how I defeated it. And I could only have done this with the feminine, with Hazel. She taught me how to do this. So I went in and I felt the depth of that pain that was being projected on depression, whatever it was, that really dark emotion. And I went into it and I found the core memory and I burst into tears and I grieved. And when I opened this grief, my heart opened and all this light came in and I stood up and I was like, yes. And I defeated it because I turned its negativity and fear into medicine. And this is what we have to do, right? And so I'm going to show you now, right, all the different ways on how I changed that. Because like I said, right, I got my head kicked in and it changed my life. I was so miserable. People started taking advantage of me. I was taking drugs and alcohol, and I was treating myself like absolute crap. And I remember I was really scared to walk outside. So one of the first things is that I got in contact with a friend. I felt really lonely, and but I didn't trust anyone. But he kept turning up at my door, and I realized, okay, I can't do this on my own. And he took me to martial arts classes, and I did not want to go, but he kind of said wouldn't take no for an answer, right? And so then I started learning martial arts, and it kind of slowly brought me into something else. It not didn't bring me out, but it did bring me into something else because essentially it was still violence and it was still a reaction from fear because I was learning to defend myself from fear of being hurt or hit because I've been hit so many times. But when I got to London, when I got diagnosed, I was like, right, I'm going to do something about this. And this is when my life started to change. I started to eat properly, putting good food in my body. That was a really big one and really difficult to integrate. I tried everything, I don't eat meat anymore, but back then I tried a carnivore diet and it worked for me, but also it didn't. I tried the paleo diet. I tried veganism for about a week, and vegetarianism. I couldn't stick with that. So um, I still eat wild caught fish, but I tried to have little of it because of this reason, right? But there has to be some joy in eating, and so I learned through spirit that if there is a recognition, like a reverence and a joy and a real enjoyment, like a ceremonial gratitude towards that food, you can absorb the goodness from it and reject everything else. So that was a really powerful one. And it was every time I had a difficulty in integrating that, like coming to something that would change my life, make me grow, there was always, like suicidal thoughts. There was always something that was a demonic entity that would come to try and stop me. And so I would have to find out ways to have a lot of fun, essentially, find different ways of overcoming that. And this is why I do so many different videos on integration because I had to learn from scratch how to do that. There weren't any books on integration out there. Nobody knew how to do it. So I'm writing 4 books on integration because it's so big. And I learned every trick in the book. So so I'm going to share with you some videos of the different ways that I integrate and get those exercise those demons, let's say. Yeah, so how to kill demons? Well, there's many different ways. One, remember you are always the dominant force. You are love, and you can just go get out. But let me show you that the main way to get rid of demons is with different forms of love for yourself and others. Being in service to others and being in service to yourself, breaking through boundaries, doing things that you don't want to do. Like sometimes I go running. Sometimes I just breathe. Sometimes I ground my feet. Sometimes I meditate to music. Sometimes I have a cold shower. So I also, after eating good food, a really good one was exercise. So I got really strong, and I didn't just stick to, I didn't go to the gym and just start lifting weights. So I got an instructor who taught me calisthenics, weight training. I was learning boxing. Sometimes I just picture their face.
Sometimes I just give it all back to Mother Earth.
Or I'll make music.
You can even worship Ganesha.
Sometimes I just dance with my girlfriend.
You can even sing in the rain.
I write wishes in my diary.
And don't forget to smell the flowers.
He was teaching me yoga, Wing Chun, Tai Chi, Qigong. I was trying everything, and every time I tried something, I would kill another demon because basically it was about growing, not getting stuck, not getting stagnant, not um, growing. And so I would take what I needed from each one. And I tried so much. I even tried cupping on my back. I did loads of biohacking. I even tried stellate ganglion in blocks. That went really bad. Don't recommend that. They numb you. Took me years to get that out of my system. It numbed me, stopped me from accessing my heart because I was trying to look for ways of curing myself. I even tried peptide injections. I was taking what else was I doing? I was doing microdosing, loads of self-help books. I was running, I was doing martial arts. I was doing everything I could to overcome and break through the barriers because if I didn't, suicidal thoughts would come up because suicidal thoughts are essentially um, back to front of killing the ego because it's an ego death. Whenever you break through the ceiling and you achieve something new, it's because you've broken through something and you've experienced an ego death. And this is what I learned on my journey. And every time I did that, I would recover new soul gifts, new memories of my childhood, and new expressions of who I am. Like I couldn't have done this several years ago. I couldn't have created this YouTube channel. No way. I had to learn how to uncensor myself, how to learn how to free my voice. And it took a huge step of filming myself and putting that on there. And that was really scary. Like, you can see the fear in my eyes in my first video when I'm talking about narcissism.
Hi everyone, my name is Alistair McLean, and this is my first and new YouTube channel called The Sacred Rainbow Warrior.
Because that's what I was most proud of. I discovered narcissism and I was taking responsibility for it. And I hadn't met anyone else that was doing that. And it really helped my partner, Hazel, because I could understand what she was going through because of all the damage that men had done to her, because I could put myself in their shoes and go, yeah, that's what I would have done. And this is how you heal it. So it was really profound way of working, and that led us to some really profound advanced spiritual work where we work together in divine union where we feel each other, and it's profound. And um, there's so many different ways to do it, to defeat them, and they always express themselves through blockages, through fear, through triggers. Triggers is a really big one. Like when you lash out at someone, that's you expressing your demons, right? But I want to say something that's really important. They're not real in a way. They're not real. We create them to look like demons, but actually they're illusions. We put cloaks over them. We project. They teach us to project that demonic energy onto our ancestors. So it's essentially when you remove that veil, it's love. And when that veil falls, people are going to realize that and they're going to be like, oh no, what have I done to myself? Because that's what happened to me. Because when we remove the veil and clean all of those illusions, you just see that everything is love. Everything is love. So, a powerful weapon that I want to talk to you about, a powerful weapon of destroying demons really, really easily is art. And what I mean by art is creation, creating. Like, have you ever seen that guy on YouTube who creates footballs? And he creates because it's his passion, right? He's constantly creating. And you can feel his passion, like he's in love with what he does. That's the kind of level of creation I'm talking about. Like learning to draw again, learning to play an instrument, learning to paint, learning to sing, learning to produce music. These are all forms of creation and art. And again, I was taught that by my partner. I was taught that by the feminine. Like I said, I had my head kicked in on that side, and so I've had to heal not only my mind, but my heart, my body, and my soul, my spirit. You cannot do it without including the whole. If you're just working on the mind, you're just going to be going round in circles. And I want to take this opportunity to talk about how we can really together make a huge difference on ending these demonic entities once and for all. How to absolutely destroy the matrix. I've seen it. It's possible. And me and my partner are doing this. We've created a Patreon which we would love for you to join, called the Prophecy Foundation. It's about healing separation, restoring sacred union, birthing the new earth. It's around prophecy, mystery, and art. And I'm going to say, I'm going to read it here. This is our foundation that we have in Patreon. And please, before I begin reading this out, really welcome donations as well. And if you can't donate, I offer services, working one-to-one and loads of other stuff. If not that, Patreon. If not that, YouTube membership on prophecywalkers.com. So, what are we? We are the new Earth wayshowers and cartographers of the new solar landscapes within the body and the divine blueprint of the initiated. We are the wisdom keepers of the sacred sequence of the evolution of consciousness of humanity through divine union, sacred partnership, and restoration of unity consciousness. This is what we channeled through our divine purpose, through our souls, through our divine connection. We are the opening wing folds of the illuminated ones who fly and give life to those in need. We are the soul mappers, peacemakers, and the way showers. We are the way, and the way knows the way. Our mission. The Prophecy Foundation exists to support individuals undergoing deep spiritual transformation, awakening, and the sacred path of inner union. We are here to offer sanctuary, community, and soul level support for those navigating the collapse of old identities, relationships, and belief systems. This is not charity in the old sense, it's a call to collective evolution, a sacred act of remembering who we truly are beyond the ego and into the full soul embodiment and sovereign birthright. Why we exist. In a world fractured by separation, disconnection, divorce, burnout, and isolation, especially for those on accelerated awakening paths, we saw the need for something radically different. A safe space for soul-led humans and walk-ins navigating breakdowns, spiritual awakenings and rebirths. Support for those leaving old structures behind, jobs, marriages, belief systems with no roadmap for what comes next. A community for those birthing the golden timeline and pioneering new earth consciousness, often alone, misunderstood, or unsupported. What we do. Through your donations, the Prophecy Foundation provides new economic models. So we are pioneering like a donation-based, freedom-centered model for spiritual work based on synarchy, breaking free from the commodification of healing, art, and truth. Accessible soul support, one-to-one mentoring, group sessions. That's going to be really good fun. Resources, Q&As, and tools for those in spiritual crisis, transformation, or transition. Sacred union and relationship repair. Support and education for conscious couples and individuals healing polarity wounds, navigating breakups, and anchoring divine union templates. Healing loneliness on the path, building conscious community and spaces of remembrance where no awakened soul walks alone again. Creative and spiritual expression, funding artistic, mystical, and channeled works that carry prophetic codes. Like Hazel's created a Soul Prophecy Oracle deck, and we have an art exhibition coming up in spring next year to express the journey of the prophecy. Publishing and legacy. We will create a publishing company to give voice to exceptional, evolutionary, and visionary writers who deserve to be rewarded fairly and celebrated for their brilliance. Our vision. We envision a world where healing separation is the norm, not perpetuating it. Healing is sacred, not sold. Community of synarchy replaces competition and hierarchy. Everyone knows why they are truly here. Spiritual awakening is supported, not pathologized, and every soul is held through their return to love, no matter their income, status, or past. How you can help. Your donations support the deliverance of this foundation, the publication of the Soul Prophecy Oracle deck, The Path to Ascension, free and sliding scale sessions for those in need, the Prophecy Art Exhibition in spring 2026, our living expenses as we dedicate full-time energy to this mission, the build out of the Prophecy Portal, a sacred online sanctuary, equipment and hire for the new personnel to support this dream, our eventual retreat space and healing sanctuary in nature. So whatever you donate is welcome. And when you donate, you become part of this, a new tribe, a new part of the prophecy, a new beginning for everyone, the whole world. It's a huge dream. We can't do it on our own. We really need your help. Giving is receiving. This is the foundation. This foundation is rooted in peace, freedom, and redemption. We are not here to perpetuate old money systems, old financial systems, or sell our soul to commodities. Instead, we walk the new path. This is a soul-led mission, a prophetic movement, a love revolution through the evolution of ascension and union. So please join us. Please join us. And so that brings us to an end. So I thank our ancestors and I thank the seven directions, the direction of in, the direction of down, the direction of up, the direction of north, the direction of west, the direction of south, and the direction of east. And I thank all of our brothers and sisters in galaxies and beyond. And I thank you. Thank you for listening. And if there's anything I missed, please ask and I'll do another video. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.